Dr. Wilson was a really important mentor for me, but perhaps not in the ways you might expect. More than gardening, I really learned about community building from Dr. Wilson. Years into my community gardening career, I learned this phrase from another community garden manager, Dan Hale. And he said that the most important word in community garden is not garden. And Dr. Wilson really, really lived that and taught me that every day. And he did that by my first summer in the garden was 2006. It was my first full summer. And that summer, he approached the Settings, which was a development that was going into Black Mountain, and said, would you sponsor an intern at the Dr. John Wilson? Or then it was just the Black Mountain Community Garden. But he asked if they would sponsor an intern at this community garden. And that was so wise and so brilliant because they were happy to make a good name for themselves in the community and to grow the community in exchange for sponsoring my income for a couple of months that summer. And he would do that all the time. He would reach out to local business people. He would always be figuring out what gifts people had to bring to the community garden. He was always looking for resources. I mean, he would stop his old pickup truck on the side of the road and load it with whatever stuff he could find and bring it to the community garden and use it for his mission of teaching gardening and growing food to give away and providing a place for people to grow food. And it was interesting, years and years later, I went to a conference on community gardening, and there was this section on asset-based community development. And it was this term that had been coined by John McKnight and this other gentleman over at Northwestern University in Chicago. And it was now this international movement. And when I found out what asset-based community development was, I realized, oh, this is what Dr. Wilson has been doing his whole life, but especially for building this community garden. And that's why it works.
John's pediatric practice was located in a house adjacent to his residence. And I can remember playing tennis over there one Sunday. They built a tennis court between the two houses, so we could play tennis often at his house. And one Sunday afternoon, we were right dead middle in the set of tennis, and a car drove up to the practice where he practiced pediatrics. And John, without really saying a word, just put his tennis racket down on the court without blinking an eye. He said, y'all just keep playing. I'll be back eventually. I'm not sure how long this will take. I think that was not the exception, that was the norm. Anytime somebody pulled up to that practice, whether it was Saturday, Sunday, didn't matter, nighttime, John would go over and take care of them.
And another one of his projects was building duck houses to help increase the wood duck population at Lake Tomahawk. And so he made a lot of these duck houses and put some in the lake and some out on the island and some up on the side of the tree. And we had quite a few wood ducks and mandarin ducks that would come in, and he'd go out in the boat and reach in and check the eggs, see how many there were. Sometimes there were as many as 20. And he'd also offer any kids that were fishing, he'd offer them $1 if they could catch a snapping turtle and give it to them to keep them from eating the baby ducks.
I'd also like to say that Dr. Wilson had a great presence and wonderful welcoming. Whenever you came to the garden, you were special and you counted, and whenever you volunteered to do anything, he was so happy, and he just took you under his wing and taught you all he knew. He just loved to tell his stories about gardening.
And he was a very generous doctor and always took time with his patients and was very good with children. He was a pediatrician. I've heard a lot of good stories about how he took time and had a lot of funny stories to tell the children and distract them while he was checking them over, make sure they were okay. And he helped my foster sister a few times. One time she fell down the stairs, and we took her over to John Wilson, and he said, "Is that a birdie in your ear?" And he'd look in the ear and check for broken bones. And he was a real nice person.